Alrighty, well, we are absolutely immersed in the holiday season, and we got a little bit of it behind us and a whole lot more in front of us. This is probably the biggest time when it comes to wine for wine sales because everybody's out buying wine for gifts. They're buying wine for parties and family celebrations. But sometimes you just want to mix it up a little bit. And when I say mix it up, that even includes mixing up wine with something else. Speaking of something else, one of my favorite guests who comes on from time to time, not nearly enough, it's Nancy Light. She's the VP at the Wine Institute, which, oh my gosh, an incredibly powerful and effective organization that oversees, well, they're really an advocacy group for the California wine industry, but they do so much good for wine all over the world. And Nancy, we're going to lighten up cocktails, I guess. Nice to have you.
I guess we are. Great to be here, David. Thank you.
Oh, man. So you guys put out something. The minute I saw this, I just freaked out. I was so crazy because it is so up my alley, and anybody that's been listening to Grape Encounters for any length of time knows that I love to tinker with wine. And there are a lot of people that think wine is sacred, and you can't mess with it, and you just got to drink it the way the winemaker made it, and that's it. But you guys come along with a wine cocktail, I guess you would call it an ebook for the holidays. And
that's right.
I love it, man. This is so cool.
Totally. So just to address what you said about, don't mess with the wine. So here's where we come out on it. We know you want to have your terrific wine. You love your wine. You want your glass of wine. You're going to have your wine with dinner. You're going to serve wine at your parties. But we all, like you said, want to have something special. Often if it's a dinner or when people walk in, you want to have, let's face it, craft cocktails has been a movement for a long time. And there is no reason in the world that wine should not be a part of that, right?
Right.
You're making these cocktails. You're using the best ingredients. And wine is just perfect. And as you said, it can also, make a drink that's refreshing and light and interesting. And, the other thing is we're in California where we've got, great produce. We've got, year-round fabulous herbs. And we just bring that all together as this, California celebration in these 8 drinks.
So let me tell you about something that happened just a couple of weeks ago. Our studios are located on the central coast of California, as you know, and we're located on a street called Traffic Way. Isn't that a beautiful name for a street?
Hope it's not true.
Traffic Way. But anyway, we do this thing that we started 5 years ago. It's called Taco Day on Traffic Way, right? And then people come up and down the street and they eat tacos from about almost 20 vendors. Anyway, I do something during that event in my tasting room that I own. And what it is I make wine margaritas. And people at first, they come, because also I should say that people sometimes go to restaurants and they have these wine cocktails. And I want to address that in this conversation because there's something awful you should know about that when you buy them in a restaurant. But anyway, people have had wine margaritas and they just go, yuck, I'll pass. And so I pour them a little bit and I go, try this. And then they just flip out. It's like, oh my gosh, I need a glass of that. I need a pitcher of that. And it's because I'm using, in most cases, I use a Sauvignon Blanc, but I also can do it with Chardonnay, and it is just absolutely delicious. And a lot of people would assume that when you make a wine cocktail that it's going to be so low in alcohol that you're not even going to notice it's there. But in reality, you tend to use more wine than you would the spirits, and so it's fairly comparable in a lot of cases. Anyway, that's my story, and people write me all the time and call me for the wine margarita recipe. I'll give that in a minute, but first of all, why did you guys decide to do this? This is so far from the deep political things that you guys mostly do at the Wine Institute.
Well, we certainly do promote California wine too. And this was really an idea that a number of us, we were sitting around brainstorming and again, just talking about wine and the holidays and, the cocktail movement. And I've always had this idea like you that, why shouldn't wine be part of, a cocktail? And if I may, we would love to maybe include your margarita recipe in our, I think we're going to do this again in the spring. So that would be a perfect recipe if you're willing to share that with credit.
Oh, you know what? People tell me that it's literally the best margarita they've ever had, and they are stunned that there's no tequila in it. But I want to say something about wine cocktails because there are a lot of people that have a misconception of what a wine cocktail is, and here's why. There's a bunch. There are companies out there. I don't know if it's a bunch, but there are companies out there that make basically faux or fake spirits out of wine, and they are awful. And they'll make like a faux whiskey or a faux vodka, and when I say faux, F-A-U-X, and you wouldn't drink it straight. I wouldn't drink it in a mixer, and that's why a lot of you who have gone to restaurants that don't have a hard liquor license but do have a wine and beer license, you go there, you order these wine cocktails, and you go, oh, that's awful. And it is awful, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about using real wine in its virgin form.
That's exactly right. And of course, in some sense, right, wine cocktails have been around for a long time. There's always been one of my favorites, the champagne cocktail. And I was pleased. I actually tried a couple of these again over Thanksgiving holiday. And one that I loved was the raspberry port sparkler. So it's a little bit of a couple of raspberries, and you muddle that with like an ounce of port style wine, add sparkling wine. And it has that, I thought it was going to be sweet, but it wasn't. It was that perfect, sparkling touch of bitterness that you get in a champagne cocktail, which is one of my favorites, or a California sparkling wine cocktail, we'll say.
How did you gather up these recipes? Because there's just a ton of them. I think the book is, 17 pages, right?
Right. It's 8 recipes. We got a bonus recipe, which we'll talk about later. That's the red wine hot chocolate, which I think is quite unique. But
that was the one that I looked at. I said, really?
But I don't know. I haven't had that one myself, but I think I've now been looking and I see it coming up in a couple of places. But these recipes were all developed by Casey Cornwell, who is a blogger and influencer. And so she came up with these, and, we wanted to provide a variety of options for people, whether it's for a single cocktail or things like you could prepare at, which I'm sure you could do with, for example, your wine margaritas on as pitcher for a party. So you're doing a party. We have, again, in the vein of things that have been around, the red apple sangria, which is kind of a twist on the traditional sangria. It's red wine, apple cider, cinnamon, some fresh fruit, apple slices, and, so refreshing and delicious. The California Gold Rush, which is Chardonnay with a mixture of lemon juice, thyme, and honey that you make a little syrup from and mix that in. And then that is, again, one that can be, made by the pitcher if you want as well.
I didn't notice how you get the thyme in there. Do you muddle the thyme? Is that what happens?
You actually are going to be cooking that, warming that a bit.
Oh, okay.
Into kind of you make a syrup of it with the honey. Yeah.
Isn't it funny, Nancy, how when it comes to wine cocktails, most people think of, oh gosh, like a Bellini, or there are just a couple of them out there. Mimosa, of course, is the grandmother or grandfather of all wine cocktails. But as more and more mixologists come onto the scene, and it really is a big movement right now, they're looking for interesting stuff to serve to their patrons, and wine is a very big go-to for them. And so, with that in mind, let's talk in a moment about, we're going to have to take a little break here, but let's talk in a moment about what kind of quality wine you put into a wine cocktail, because I think a lot of people, while they would put really excellent vodka into a mixed drink that's driven by vodka, wine, I think people might be inclined to go buy something for $2. So let's come back to that. My guest is Nancy Light. She is the VP at the Wine Institute. And by the way, you have a public website. I don't want to miss the opportunity to tell people where to go for that. And they can get this, they can download this there.
Exactly. DiscoverCaliforniaWines.com.
DiscoverCaliforniaWines.com. There is a wealth of information there, and there's a lot that they do that, is very, very consumer driven. You'll find so many you could spend a whole day on that website. It's just really that interesting. Okay, we're going to be back with more Grape Encounters Radio as we do the unthinkable. We mess with wine. It used to be sacred, but now it's just more succulent than ever.